Welcome to 1991 Movie Rewind, a podcast where we watch and review every movie released in 1991, from the all-time greatest classics to the critically panned and everything in between. We will rediscover forgotten fan favorites and uncover hidden gems as we explore the depths of direct-to-video. Join us in our celebration of the fun, unique, and diverse films of this highly underrated year. This week, we watched Life Stinks.
Hi, this is Nikki.
And this is Jon, and thank you for joining us on 1991 Movie Rewind. In Life Stinks, Goddard Bolt, played by Mel Brooks, is one of the richest people in the country. In order to expand his empire, he plans to buy a large, destitute section of the Los Angeles area and build expensive properties there. A competing businessman has the same idea and buys half of the needed land. They agree to a bet. Bolt must spend 30 days living on the streets, homeless, with no resources or money. If he can do it, he gets the rights to develop. Otherwise, his rival will take it all. Screenplay by Mel Brooks, Rudy DeLuca, and Steve Haberman. Directed by Mel Brooks, and released on July 26, 1991. Have you seen Life Stinks?
No, I have not.
Me either. It's very much a forgotten Mel Brooks movie, I think.
Yeah, I remember the cover of the VHS tape.
I barely do. When I think of Life Stinks and when I see even like the font and everything, my mind goes to the movie Life with Eddie Murphy that was released later, because it's very similar in that same like big red bold lettering and white with the characters in front of it. But yeah, that's Life is probably a better movie than Life Stinks.
I didn't know this movie was in 1991, I guess. I thought this was earlier. Because it seems
has that
like
vibe. Yeah.
I when watching it, I was like, how and why? Because before this was Spaceballs.
Yeah.
After this, Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah.
Those are like my two favorites.
Yeah.
And then it's like, that's why I was thinking, how and why?
Yeah, it's so much
It was just
different than most of what you know of Mel Brooks, because it's
Yeah.
not a parody movie. It's not spoofing
No.
a genre at all. It's not even like trying to reference other movies within the context of the situation.
It was like, maybe, I wonder, I didn't really look it up, but I wonder if he was just writing this and it took him a while. This is more of like a romantic comedy in a way.
Yeah. I think that's sort of the intention.
Yeah.
I also was reading like in the trivia that it's also one of the few movies where he does not directly address the camera ever. Because in most of the movies, him or someone else will break the fourth wall and be like, can you believe this shit that we're dealing with? Type of a thing. And that does not happen here at all.
Like he was trying to make a serious movie.
Yeah, kind of, with some jokes mixed in. And I'll say like right off the bat that I think that this is probably the best movie in terms of acting performance from Mel Brooks. Like his performance as like a legitimate actor is the best we've ever seen in this movie.
Okay.
But comedy-wise, it is not what you expect from Mel Brooks. I think if it was anyone else besides him, you'd probably give it a little bit more leeway. And you'd like see some of the influence. There's definitely some Mel Brooks style elements in there. Like at the very beginning when you have like, he's getting out of the car and they're all walking along the business office and everything, and he slips in some spilled coffee, and so everyone who's following him, his like pack, also has to slip in the coffee in solidarity, like stuff like that, and using props as euphemisms for boners, like that kind of thing is still in here, but for the most part it really does take a lot of it seriously, with like sprinkling of humor, which is much different. It's tough to know where to start with this one.
I mean, you pretty much said in the summary.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah, I mean, they start off in the office, and basically he's this ruthless businessman, and they're talking about how they're going to have to cut down the rainforest to do some other option, and the lawyers that he's with are all trying to convince him that it's such a bad idea to do that. Like, oh, we'd have to cut down this entire section of the rainforest, and he's like, so. Well, there's this tribe that lives there, and that's the only place that they have, and you shouldn't. They're going to be displaced and out of homes. So
yeah, he just didn't care. And in my mind, I started thinking, is this going to be like another Other People's Money?
Yeah, I definitely want to compare it to Other People's Money. I think because like they're both supposed to be comedies in some degree, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Other People's Money is more satirical than meant to be laugh out loud. This is supposed to be more laugh out loud, but I feel like this may have even like explored a couple of those themes better than Other People's Money.
Yeah.
And I wish that they both didn't exist. You could have combined the two into like one better movie, possibly. I don't know exactly how.
Like, but this could have been, like Danny DeVito in this part.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been fine.
Mel Brooks directed and wrote it. Didn't have to star in it.
Did not have to star in it, other than the fact that he likes to,
star in
his own movies, or at least have some bit part. I don't think he was right for the part, even except for maybe based on age, because of the like love interest that he has with like Leslie Ann Warren and stuff. It just seemed like it was probably meant or better suited for someone a little bit younger than him. So yeah, they go through all these different options, and then he's like, I'm gonna turn this slummy part of Los Angeles into what I call the Bolt Center, named after himself. And like he brings down this like new model off from the ceiling, which crushes the old model that's right there, as like something of a visual humor thing. And then he has this big old tower in the middle, and he frames it in such a way that the tower is used to like convey his erection. Like it's like, here's my boner of all this stuff I'm gonna do. And then you get a call or a visitor in terms of the other businessman, Craswell, and then like the tower slumps over to indicate he went limp. So like that's the kind of thing that it starts off as, and then it becomes a lot slower at points and a lot more serious as you go through and deal with the actual aspects of being homeless, because they too, those two come up with the idea of having the bet of he will live on the streets for 30 days without any money, can't use his name, can't tell anybody who he is or anything, and has to do everything. He has to wear an ankle bracelet to make sure he stays within the vicinity and doesn't get out of bounds. And then whoever wins gets all of the property that the other person owns and can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
And so, since the vast majority of the movie is him like on the streets as a homeless person, it already sort of gets into dicey territory of like, are they going to make fun of
homeless people? They didn't.
And they don't really.
Yeah.
And they also don't really make fun of the rich people either. Like, I guess it's the whole thing of like, I'm watching a Mel Brooks movie, I'm expecting them to parody somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
And the only thing they really do is like the cavalcade of lawyers that surrounds both of them, are underhanded and doing whatever else, and their response is, well, what do you expect? We're lawyers.
Right.
What I want to say, I think, is I don't think that they did a very good job of explaining the time frame in this movie either.
Oh, yeah, because I thought a week went by.
Yeah.
When this was supposed to be 30 days of him on the streets.
Yeah. So he's on the street. I think they would have easily been able to fix that problem with just like a little bit of a title card or something. Like a little...
like 7 days later.
Yeah. Just like day 1 in the corner or something
okay.
like that.
Yeah,
or day 7 in the corner. Something like that would have been helpful, because... Okay, they shave his mustache off because he's wearing his typical villain mustache like you saw in Spaceballs at the start. And he has a toupee, which they rip off and make a big deal out of that in terms of a joke, which isn't really a joke.
He wears a business suit.
He wears a suit which is ripped a little bit, and that's his entire outfit for the entire time.
Right.
But his, like, stubble is there, like, right away, and it's the same exact facial hair and stubble from day 1 as day 30, which made it really hard to tell.
Okay,
You
yeah.
know? Like, that's one of the visual cues that I was going
Like-
off of. Like, well, much time must not have passed, because, you know, their
From day
facial
one,
hair is exactly the same.
Yeah, it would have grown to a beard.
Yeah. Or they could have at least shown him shaving somehow to make it make sense. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the clothes don't change, not a whole lot happens in terms of, like, story or anything that helps you indicate that time is passing happens in this. It's just all of a sudden someone, you know, outside of the circle, like there's an exterior shot of, you know, like Craswell and his attorney is saying, there's only 3 days left and he's going to make it. And like, oh, really?
I mean, the first 2 nights, you can tell, you know, the first night he was walking around trying to find a place to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't. Finally found, like, a box or whatever. And then the next morning is when he meets other homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of kicks off from there. So, you know, night 1 and day 2. But then after that,
it's all a blur.
it's all just, it seems as if it's a week, like a week went by. I guess we can get to, I don't know, the quote love story. I don't know. Just how the way that progressed.
Yeah, there wasn't much opportunity to progress anything.
Because it seemed as if, it didn't show as if they were in love.
No, not at all. I mean, so they first meet because his shoes get stolen, and he chases the thugs into, or the thugs chase him into Leslie Ann Warren's, who plays Molly. Molly's like little section of an alley, and then she scares them away, but they still get his shoes, and she lets him.
Well, she's like, hey, you're
collection.
a size whatever.
Yeah, like 9D or something like
Yeah,
that.
9.5D, which was standard. I had to look it up. I was like, what
yeah,
is
we didn't
D?
know what D meant in terms of shoe size.
It means standard size.
So,
And she had like a pile of shoes and gave him some shoes.
yeah.
And then, you know,
And
they
then
just
he puppy
kind of...
dogs her because he doesn't know how to be homeless, and she's going to show him the ropes, and so he just, like, follows her around because he doesn't know
She's like, let me
anything.
show you where we can go get food. Let me show you how I get money. I collect cans. I do this.
Yeah.
And how she made her home, I guess. I mean, she made this little corner with just boxes and piles of random things, her home.
Exactly.
And she was like, follow me and I'll show you how I do it, I guess.
Yeah, and they have, like, a couple short sequences before that of him trying to make money by, like, doing the washing windows things. Like, he's observing someone else do it, and then he tries to do it, and it goes disastrously wrong, right?
Yeah.
Where he sees, like, a little kid dancing for money, and, you know, like...
He tries to do
and
that.
then he tries to do the exact same thing, but no one cares because he's, like, a 60-year-old man doing what, you know, a 5-year-old is doing. and
right,
and
no
it's
one
not
cares
cute
about
when
some,
he does
yeah,
it.
and no one cares about some 60-year-old man spinning around and dancing.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but the movie definitely touches on a lot of what you know as, like, the standard homeless conventional tropes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so Molly takes Bolt to the mission, and, before that, actually,
I mean, he meets...
Bolt meets Sailor first.
Yeah. In the first night, first morning, I guess.
Yeah, he finds a box to sleep in, and then this one homeless guy is
He's
peeing on
his
it
box,
when he wakes up.
and then he wakes up, and he's like, "Whoa, hey, what are you doing?" And then the homeless guy, whose name, well, in the movie, his name is Sailor.
His name is Sailor because he was nearly in the Navy.
Yes. And he wears like a sailor cap thing.
Yeah, he wears an outfit.
And he was like, "Oh, I pee here every morning, I guess." I don't know.
Right,
I didn't know that anyone lived here.
This was my spot for my morning pee.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, Mel Brooks or Bolt wakes up and he has like the word Pepto kind of cemented on his forehead.
Yeah, sort of like marker.
Yeah,
thing.
It's kind of like the box print, just kind of. I don't want to say melted on his.
Yeah, it's like his head was the silly putty to the box's newspaper.
Yes, yeah. Like
so it absorbed the printing.
Yeah, onto
overnight.
his skin of his forehead. So his forehead says Pepto, but it's backwards.
And so Sailor gives him the nickname Pepto, and that's
his name.
That's what he goes by.
Yeah,
because he doesn't correct him, and he's not
he's
allowed
like,
to
okay,
invoke his own
whatever,
actual
I'm Pepto.
name.
Yeah.
So yeah, they go to the mission and they see Sailor, and we also meet the other man in the gang, Fumes, and I believe he's called that because of how much alcohol he drinks for the most part.
Right, and then I think it just
drinks very hard, very strong stuff.
Yeah,
gives off fumes, and then they become like a group of people who travel together and do that.
Just try to survive on the streets together.
Yeah.
And 30 days go by, I guess.
Yeah, 30 days go by. I mean, obviously some stuff happens, like, Molly's home is burned in a fire because the thugs that she scared off come back and take revenge.
Yeah, they set her whole little camp, I guess, on fire.
And there's like a couple little spots where Craswell, the other businessman, is trying to sabotage Bolt a little bit. And so, there's a massive rain, and he orders that the mission that they would all go for refuge to be closed, and so they're like flooded out and stuff like that. But not a whole
Trying
lot.
to make him give up.
Yeah.
I suppose.
But there really isn't a whole lot of that same manipulation. It just sort of it's just normal, hey, how do I find food? Oh, what am I going to do for a little bit extra cash? Oh, I need to get my clothes dry, or I don't know. Just little stuff like that happens here and there.
Yeah, the whole thing with these thugs.
The thugs were really bad actors.
Oh yeah.
They're extreme. Even for 90s comedy standards, it was painful.
That whole conflict between the thugs and him and Molly, that felt like a 3-day rift.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was I just didn't know this was throughout the month. But it just seemed as if one day she scares away the thugs. Next day they come, set her area on fire. Third day they're like, oh, let's get
revenge. Here's our plan. Chase them to this place, and we'll burn them with scalding soup that we stole from the Chinese restaurant.
You're right.
Yeah.
And
that's
it. I thought that was over a span of 3 days, but that was probably over a span of throughout that month. They don't really.
Yeah, it's possible. They don't really have any way to indicate that to us. But that fight scene was really the only time that the ankle bracelet comes into play, because he's being chased, and then he gets
chased
beaten up by the thug, over the curb, and that sets off the alarm on his ankle bracelet.
Yeah, because
they
kind of throw him across the street, and then that street is
the boundary.
Is the boundary. So on the other edge of the street, he's out of bounds.
So he has to keep coming back to get beat up, because he can't be out of bounds for more than 30 seconds, or else he'll lose. So he doesn't want to, but he has to go back into the fight.
And then these two guys are like, you want to get beat up?
Yeah.
What the?
And then he's crawling back. He's like, let me just put my ankle on the curb, please. Yeah.
Right.
So, I wish there was a little bit more about that. Part of what made Brewster's Millions fun, right? To, look at another movie where someone's trying to accomplish a goal. You have another side that's sort of trying to sabotage them, and there are weird, strict rules that you can't tell the other person, the people involved about. Right? So, Brewster's Millions, you have to spend all this money in order to get more money, but you can't tell anybody why you're doing it. you can't tell them what the end goal is, and so on and so forth. I wish there was more of that type of conflict in this.
Mm-hmm.
But instead it's like...
This was the only conflict.
Yeah, this is like the only potential conflict. The only other scene where it comes up is when he's trying to, you know, he's in like that, that, I don't want to say motel, the place where he's trying to get the room at the very beginning.
Right.
And it costs $2.50, but he has no money. And so like he's immediately trying to leverage his wealth by saying, if you let me stay here, I'll get you like $200 in 30 days.
Right.
And the guy's like, okay, no problem. Just give me a down payment of $2.50 first.
Right, and then he's like, I'll give you $10,000.
Right.
And then he's like, I'll give you $20,000. And the guy is just like, okay, as long as you give me the $2.50 now.
Right. Oh, Flophouse. I wrote it down because side note about that actor.
Okay.
I want to mention real quickly. First, he was in Bugsy. He was Frank Costello in Bugsy, which I did not recognize. His name is Carmine Caridi. He's also going to be in Femme Fatale. He was in Godfather 2 and 3. The reason I wrote him down is because he is one of only 4 people who have had their Academy membership revoked.
Okay.
You know, the Academy Awards, Oscars. The other 3 are Harvey Weinstein, Roman Polanski, Bill Cosby.
Why this guy? What did he do?
He was attached to illegal copies of screeners being distributed on the internet. So he let someone borrow his copies of movies, and then that person put them on the internet, and it had like his watermark with like his, you know, information on there or whatever. And so the Academy, whether it was intentional or not, whether there was money exchange or not, it's like, this is unacceptable, you're out of the Academy. So it's those 3 fuckos and then Carmine Caridi. So just a weird little side note. You know, the rules of the game don't really factor into the plot like at all. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay, the other part
I mean,
was near the end of the month, I suppose, where he and Molly are all of a sudden in love with each other.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, there's one other thing I do want to get to before we talk about that, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And that's that, you know, they do face the reality of like homelessness in terms of like the death as well, because shortly after they get flooded out, Sailor passes away in the middle of the street because he's getting sick, and you know, all of the rain and water, maybe pneumonia or who knows what, but you know, he dies in the street in front of a shop, and the shop owner, who is played by the guy who played the uncle in UHF, Stanley Brock was the actor's name. He, you know, basically he's like not treating them as human. He's like, get this guy out of here. Like, hey, can you just like push him off to the side? He's blocking my traffic.
And like he has no remorse whatsoever for...
Yeah. So like they do go into a lot of the, you know, again, the themes that you would expect to see in this.
Right.
Not as deeply as something like Fisher King, obviously. They don't really get into like the mental health side of things too much, other than the fact that Molly says that she oftentimes, I think she said, when she was explaining how she became homeless, it seemed like she was saying that she was quote unquote crazy, and now is just using it as a defense mechanism to keep people away from her. That's the impression I got from her conversation, but maybe I'm wrong. And she's just been pretending the entire time. But beyond that, they don't really get into the mental health aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, I think where the love story starts to really take hold is like right when like the 30 days has passed, and he's all happy. He's like, I did it. And then they find a clothing warehouse.
Yeah, but then he tells her, you know, I'm rich and I made this bet.
Yeah. But never tells her what the bet was specifically.
Right.
And I don't know, like, they could have added like a little bit more humanity and conflict in there by saying, by having him
live on the streets, he now feels...
Yeah, he clearly feels like differently about what he wants to do with the space.
Right.
But like he could have, you know, there could have been more conflict or something else in the movie by having him explained that his intention was to win the bet so he could tear the whole thing down.
Yeah, but he didn't.
But he didn't even say
doesn't
what the
explain
bet
it.
was.
But now he wants to, help the homeless.
Right. Which they explain like at the very end is like the epilogue of the whole thing.
Right, but yeah, he didn't tell her, "Hey, I made this bet and I'm really rich and I'm gonna tear this entire neighborhood down and
he
make
could have at
like
least said-
condos or whatever."
He could have at least said, "Hey, I'm really rich and now I own this entire area."
Yeah, he could have, told the truth, and then maybe that would have been more conflict, because that would make Molly feel like shit. She'd be like, "Oh, so you're gonna take my home? You were gonna take my home away from me?"
Yeah.
But they don't.
No, they don't do anything.
That could have been another thing, but it wasn't.
But
Yeah,
they find a way
fall
to
in love somehow.
They fall in love very, very quickly, just like everything else happens very quickly. And they do a little dance number after the bet is won inside this like clothing warehouse area.
That yeah, that set. I don't know. I was like, what is it? It looked like it was supposed to be like a set for a play, like for cats or something. It was just like randomly, like neatly piled clothes in random parts of a warehouse, and they start, dancing around. Because she, the other thing is that she said she used to be a Broadway dancer.
Yeah.
Before
getting married and ruining her life by getting married and having him leave her. Well, she didn't have him leave her. He left her.
Yeah.
Her husband left her.
Yeah, her husband. But yeah, so her husband left her, and then she just had nothing.
She had nothing because she didn't have a job. She quit her job to be with him.
Right.
He left her. She didn't have enough money to. Right. Didn't leave her anything. She didn't have enough money to pay for the mortgage, and bills piled up. And
right, and then she came home.
Yeah. So yeah, they're in this like warehouse or maybe whatever. It's a big place with a bunch of clothes.
Yeah, it's like
and then like
strategically piled clothes. It's like the set was really odd to me.
And then a dance number breaks out because they're celebrating with champagne and whatever, and like it becomes like a fantasy sequence again, sort of like Fisher King.
Yeah.
And I would even equate it a little bit to Doc Hollywood, and probably like a little bit more effective than Doc Hollywood, like showing their love growing through this dance number.
Yeah.
Because like it transitions to fancy lighting, and there's a spotlight following her, and she's like, swaying and twirling all around these different outfits.
Yeah,
and
the
everything.
lights dim, and she has like her own little number she does.
Yeah, and there's like sweeping camera work for the first time in the whole movie, and so like it's not funny, but it's still like a nice
like this whimsical
scene. Yeah, it's a nice whimsical scene. That's a good word for it. And then afterwards they
decide to
get ready to get down to business.
Right, and she's got like 73 pairs of shirts on. I mean, that part made me laugh.
Yeah.
And because she's like, take me now. And he's like,
hurry,
I'm getting
hurry.
there. I'm getting.
I'm trying.
But that also kind of remind me of like Young Frankenstein, the part where she's like, roll in the hay. Like this was like, I don't know if that was like a callback to like rolling in a pile of clothes.
Maybe. I don't know. Like he does tend to repeat not exact word for word jokes, but
scenes.
Yeah, like situations and stuff like that. So it could be.
Yeah, I mean that part that made me laugh a little bit because she's like, take me now, and he's like, I'm getting there, and she's honestly, she has like 20 pairs of like shirts and dresses, layered.
Yeah, there are a couple of good scenes in there. There's just not much, and they're few and far between. The next part where they go back to Bolt's house, where there's supposed to be the celebration of him winning the bet, he learns that Craswell had colluded with his attorneys in order to ignore
house.
things. Yeah, take his house, take all of his possessions, because Bolt had given them power of attorney before he left to handle his business affairs. And so they used that to be underhanded and take all of his stuff, including the house, and sign it over to Craswell. So that leads to like a little scene where sort of like the jerk. He's going around his house and like saying, I'm going to take this piece of art, I'm going to take this piece of art. Like, he's like carrying all this like lunky shit and like trying to escape the house, and security obviously stops him. And then he basically just goes like legitimately crazy after
after that.
He gets into a slapping match with another, homeless person.
I mean,
who claims to be
that was funny because this
J. Paul
guy is
Getty.
like, no, I'm rich.
Yeah, I'm richer than you. I'm J. Paul Getty. Who, like the Getty Museum in LA, if you might not know. By the way, that person's played by one of the writers, Rudy DeLuca. That's who was J. Paul Getty, was one of the writers of the movie. And so Bolt gets institutionalized, basically, because he's like beating up on this homeless person and claiming he's rich when he's not, and everyone thinks he's crazy.
Yeah, that scene was funny because as Mel Brooks or Pepto or Bolt or whatever is getting pulled away by the cops, J. Paul Getty screaming, I'm still richer than you, and then that just like riles him up even more. He's like, let me at him.
Yeah, and like stops the ambulance and they get out and attacks him again. I also want to make a quick note that one of the paramedics that picks him up in that scene is a person named Danny Wells, who played Luigi in the Mario Brothers Super Show. Mario Brothers Super, like Captain Lou Albano. Mm-hmm. Luigi. And then we see another 1991 movie with a crazy packed hospital. Mm-hmm. It's just like, is Tumblr a thing? Like, is that still a thing? Like, get like a Tumblr post of like all the different 1991 hospital scenes.
I mean, that also made me think of going back to the beginning where he's walking into the office, but it didn't really happen. But another thing that happens in like 80s and I guess early 90s movies, like office setting movies, when the boss walks in and everyone has to stop. They only just showed their shoes, so you couldn't see other people in the hallways.
Yeah, they weren't stopping. You just heard the good mornings and
good mornings. You heard good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah. But I'm assuming that everyone stopped in the hallways to say good morning to their boss. And,
they probably
it's another Tumblr thing we could do, walking through hallways of office buildings.
If someone wants to go ahead and take that, go ahead and do that.
I always come up with these weird ideas, and then I'm like, it's too much work.
Too much work. And then skip ahead, he comes out of it. He's out of the hospital. He's living back in the street, and then they're gonna have Craswell's gonna have a party at the construction site to celebrate his new construction that he's about to start. There's equipment there, and then Bolt / Pepto, along with the other homeless population, decides to fight back, and they stop all the equipment and they crash the party.
That scene also made me laugh. That was probably the funniest scene.
Yeah, it's like the first part and the last part are
of the
Mel
movie.
Brooksian.
Yes.
And then the rest of it is like a standard, not so great romantic comedy.
Yeah, like a wannabe serious romantic comedy. I don't know. But yeah, that party scene was when I started to laugh.
Yeah, because you have that one person
I was not laughing.
Like that one homeless guy who grabs like this, not
a woman,
but like this hoity-toity woman. He's like, "Do you come here often?"
Yeah, and then
Shall we dance?
Yeah, the way he's talking to her.
And then they like end up together at the end and everything, and she catches the bouquet at the wedding.
Spoilers.
I know. Well, every single episode has spoilers.
I know.
This podcast. So yeah, they get married and everything. But yeah, before that even happens, Bolt / Pepto ends up winning because they fight their construction equipment like animals. Like it has like
dinosaurs,
roaring noises and stuff like that. And
or it was trying to be kind of like...
It's like King Kong-ish. Godzilla-ish.
Yeah, that's like because they were making the noises.
Yeah, and they even had like fake blood, like when one of them crunches onto the other one.
Yeah.
They make the machinery bleed. So that type of absurdity is mostly missing from this movie, but it shows up right there in that little gag. Right. And so Craswell acknowledges that the bet was real, and so Bolt wins. He gets to develop the whole thing, and he decides to make something of a homeless sanctuary as part of the thing with like no cost housing and whatnot. And then they get married. Pepto and Molly get married. And Molly takes all of the cans from the back of the limo that would normally be making noise to say just married. And is like, do you know how much this is worth? And they drive off.
They drive off, and the vanity plate of the limousine says Pepto.
Pepto, yes.
Like another shout out is they showed, so the church that they got married in was in, you know, the slums that they were, you know, in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And earlier in that movie, they show a wedding, and they have these two interpreter guys that come out.
Well, yeah, they have like the priest and then the priest's interpreter for the Spanish.
For the Spanish,
audience.
Yeah. That part was funny as well.
Yes.
The interpreter.
And the priest was Pauly Shore's dad, Sammy Shore.
Mm.
So,
the Spanish interpreter would, you know,
he
priest would say something. He would over
exaggerate movements, especially.
He'd be like, "Have a great, have
a
a great honey." Like the priest says, "Have a great honeymoon." The interpreter is, you know, miming like sexual moves and stuff, and then the priest is like, "I am not saying, like, I am not, like, whatever you're saying is not what I said."
Yeah, exactly. So, and that
happens at the end of the movie too. The same interpreter situation.
And that's how the movie ends.
Yep.
So overall, you know, it could have been worse. It could have been better. But I mean, I think it's a very tricky subject matter to deal with in terms of comedy, and I think it could have used a little more Mel Brooks flair overall. Mm-hmm. But at least it didn't like make fun of the homeless. So
yeah.
It tried to say, you know, here's the plight, and inject a little bit of humor, but just didn't do that well. Anything else we missed?
No.
Okay. Quickly talk about cast and crew that we haven't touched on already. So we already know about Mel Brooks, right? He is our second EGOT winner in the podcast. First was Mike Nichols, if you remember. Mm-hmm. Mel Brooks has an Oscar win for the screenplay for The Producers in the 1960s. He has Grammy wins for his, you know, comedic work. He has Emmy win. I didn't write down what he won everything for, but obviously he won Tonys for The Producers as well. He has Emmy wins, I think mostly for guest spots on like Mad About You. Okay. I think if I remember right. Grammys for like 2000-Year-Old Man albums, I believe, is what that was for. You know Mel Brooks. We talked about some of his movies already here. Rudy DeLuca is a very, you know, common collaborator with Mel Brooks. Also worked on the Carol Burnett Show back in the day. He played Vinny in Spaceballs, who was the Pizza the Hut goon, you know, like in the metallic suit. Mm-hmm. So he's always like has some sort of role in that stuff. And then Steve Haberman was the other writer. He was a 3-time Emmy-nominated writer for Outstanding Variety Specials starring Mel Brooks, which I don't remember any of those existing in the early 2000s, but they all did, and they all got Emmy nominations. He and Rudy also wrote Dracula Dead and Loving It, and Screw Loose, which was a later Mel Brooks movie as well. Leslie Ann Warren, Oscar nominated for Victor Victoria, Emmy nominated for Family of Spies. She was in Mission Impossible, the TV show. Later on, you know, she took over for a departing actress there. And she's also a Razzie nominee for The Color of Night.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember her in that movie.
Me either. I mean, her character was super hammy in this. She was like probably the most like flamboyant and over the top out of all the actors in this entire movie. And I know it like had something of a purpose. She liked to really, you know, mime or, you know, reenact certain things as she explained things, and it was this very boisterous performance. But it felt oddly out of place considering everything else was relatively low key by comparison.
I mean, she's also mostly known for being Miss Scarlet in Clue.
Yes.
I was like, I'm like, are you going to continue?
Yeah, I guess I just sort of I go on tangents, you know.
I know, but I was like, that's how I know her.
Yeah. I want to talk about the two other homeless people in the crew. Fumes was played by Teddy Wilson, who passed away in 1991 before this movie was released. He was in sitcoms like That's My Mama, Good Times, and a couple episodes of What's Happening and What's Happening Now. Howard Morris, who played Sailor, is well known to kids of our era. He was very much a prolific voice actor who did voices of people like Wade Duck in U.S. Acres, Sweet Chuck in the Police Academy cartoon, Galaxy High, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Flintstones, Jetsons, Shirt Tales. He was Jughead in the Archie cartoons. He did Adam Ant. He was Gopher in the Winnie the Pooh series. And on TV commercials, he was the Hamburglar, Mayor McCheese, and the Professor in all of those McDonald's commercials.
Wow.
He wasn't always Hamburglar. He took over for somebody, but he was always... Oh, Craswell? I've been saying his name, but I haven't said the actor's name. Jeffrey Tambor. And I'm not a fan.
I know.
I'm a fan. Like he's obviously done good work as an actor. He's a 2-time Emmy winner for Transparent. You know him for Arrested Development, Larry Sanders. But just as a human being. Yeah, a couple other... I mean, a lot of the lawyers have, like, well-known parts, but they aren't in the movie a whole lot. The one I probably want to mention the most is Stuart Penkin, who plays Pritchard. He's, like, the main lawyer. He has a very recognizable, like, rounder face. He's the one who's like, what do you expect? We're lawyers. Mm-hmm. He was on not necessarily the news, which won a Cable Ace Award. He was Earl Sinclair in the Dinosaurs sitcom. He was the voice of Earl Sinclair. That's probably his most famous role. He was in Fatal Attraction, Second Sight. Younger viewers or listeners of us might know him from the Disney comedy Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century, because he played Commander Plank in that. And he's also going to be in the 1991 movie Mannequin on the Move. So we can talk about him more then if we need to. Carmen Filippi, he played Pops, who was in the we didn't even talk about the scene.
The
11's
older,
Up.
Yeah, the older man.
The older man at the mission who was like, you know, clearing out tables and offering food. He played Pops. And 11's Up is what Sailor said means you're close to death. Like when your necks look like 11s popping out of your neck, that means your time is almost done. I was getting confused with Carl Ole Olsen, but he's not. Carmen Filippi is the older man in Wayne's World, and also the guy at the bar in The Wedding Singer.
Oh, okay.
So if you've seen either of those two movies, that's who it is. He's also going to be in the 1991 movie called Alligator 2: The Mutation. No awards to speak of. No Razzies or anything like that either, so I think that's probably expected. I think this movie flopped significantly. I'm showing a budget of about $13 million, and it made about $4 million.
Yeah, which is sad. I bet these people were like, oh yeah, Spaceballs. They go to this, and they're like, oh, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously Mel Brooks has a specific reputation.
I mean, he has other good movies.
And stuff like that. These are all good, like, parody type movies, and that's not what you're getting here.
Yeah.
So I guess on to true crime and pop culture.
Okay, so this movie was released the same day as V.I. Warshawski, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And that true crime I already talked about, which was Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah. And
then I was going to talk about what Jeffrey Tambor was up to, but I'm not in the mood.
You can Google it if you want to.
I mean, maybe he's in one other 1991 movie, and I didn't want to talk about that because I also talked about what Gerard Depardieu was up to, and I was like, a couple episodes ago, and I was like, I am not in the mood to talk about another horrible human being right now. I started to look for other TV stuff, so I looked up what was on late night that night, and we were lucky enough to find YouTube videos of Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Mm-hmm. And then we also were able to find another YouTube a small clip of the David Letterman show for July 26, 1991. So we watched those. And the guests for the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was Susan Sarandon.
talking about
Thelma and
Louise.
Yeah, Thelma and Louise, which they didn't give too much spoilers.
No, I mean, talk shows don't typically give spoilers. They
I
want
know.
to entice people to go see the movie. So they did show a clip, which I think was
Taken
cut.
out. Yeah, because
I mean,
we
they
didn't
showed
see
like
the
the
clip.
front and the beginning, or the front and the end of the clip, but it seemed like dialogue was cut out of the scene that they showed.
Yeah,
for
on the YouTube.
purposes.
Yeah. And the musical guest was Lyle Lovett. He sang this song called Friend of the Devil, which is a cover of a Grateful Dead song.
He did 2 songs.
His second song was called Once Is Enough. I know nothing about Lyle Lovett besides him marrying Julia Roberts. That's all I know. I don't know anything about his music. I never really listened to it.
No, I never cared either way. I was honestly surprised that it was in the YouTube video.
Yeah, him singing.
Yeah.
Because usually, for when we watch SNL on Peacock, they usually take out the musical guests.
Yeah, and like a lot of that stuff gets copyright flagged, but maybe because it's like a live performance and not a direct copy of the studio album, it got through. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, I didn't mind the songs. They were kind of
They're just usual
slow country ballad type
folky
side.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then he also he got interviewed briefly as well afterwards and was talking about how he was going to be in Robert Altman's The Player.
And that's where he met Julia Roberts.
Oh, on the set of that?
Yeah.
In 1992?
Yep.
So, evidently shot in 1991, so that's where their love bloomed. And then the third guest.
The third guest is this entomologist and professor. He's like a bee expert his name is Dr. Norman Gary. And I found his website and I went down a rabbit hole with this guy. This guy has been on a lot of TV spots all the way up to 2010. And in the episode on the Tonight Show, he talks about how he's like a professor of entomology at UC Davis. And on his website, it says that he retired in 1994 as a professor.
Okay.
And then on his website, it also shows that, he has his own musical career, which they show a little segment on the Tonight Show where he's in a little glass container with a bunch of bees playing like a clarinet.
Sort of putting like a bee suit on and he tries to play some music.
He's playing a clarinet and there's bees all flying around him and stuff. And people are like freaked out and whatever. But he is in several bands. Okay. Like they're like Dixieland type bands. He plays the clarinet, alto sax, tenor sax, and flute. And some of the band's names are, play on words of like bee related things. One of them is a 3-piece band called Honeycomb.
Okay.
A 7-piece Dixieland band called the Bee's Knees. And then there's another one. He's in a German band. It's called the Sauerkrauts, which nothing to do with bees, but I thought that was funny.
Did you find any proof that did he ever play with Lyle Lovett?
No. But
made fun of another connection was made.
No, so his TV spots, he did a lot of, stuff like on animal type shows, like PBS type. Sure. Isn't this cool type?
Bees are our friends.
Right. A lot of that during the 80s and 90s. But then I noticed that he was in an episode of MTV's Jackass.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's episode number 5. I don't know. It's called Beekini. So anything dealing with bees, he was there.
Yeah.
He was also on the spin-off of Jackass, the show called Dr. Steve-O. Did you ever watch that?
No.
There was like 2 spin-offs. It was the one with like Chris Pontius, the Wild Boys.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one either.
I watched that, but I never really
watched. The Bam Margera thing, was that considered a spin-off?
Like with his family?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. But that wasn't really... That was just like him and his family.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dr. Steve-O was kind of... It's a show where it's like... It only lasted a season where it was just... Each episode was Steve-O talking about certain things. It was kind of like a fear factor. It was just like each episode was like a scary thing that people are afraid of. And he was in the Bee episode, obviously.
Can I just quick side note, because I just learned this recently and I found it fascinating about Jackass. I know it has nothing to do with 1991. I learned that before Jackass went on the air on MTV, Johnny Knoxville was offered like a recurring segment, like a weekly segment on Saturday Night Live to do like either stunts or pranks or something like that, like every single week as like a little thing. But Johnny Knoxville was like, no, I'm gonna do the Jackass show instead.
Like I'm gonna do my own thing.
Yeah. So I just
I mean, I don't know, go for him. He's still like they're gonna make Jackass 4.
Yeah, I think it's coming out pretty soon. So.
And okay, so
catch that on the 2021 Movie Rewind podcast.
Right, yeah. And some of the he was like a consultant for certain movies. So any movie that had bees in it,
yeah, he just wants to be in the.
He was
the man
there, and that included the movie Candyman, which is one of my favorites. Okay. And then 2 1991 movies. One, My Girl, which you haven't seen, but there's bees.
I know about the bees in it. Yep, I know about the bee aspect of it.
And then the second was Fried Green Tomatoes, which there's a bee scene.
Don't know about the bees in that one.
But yeah, he was in anything that had to do with bees. He was the man.
He was King Bee.
So yeah, this guy, I don't know. This guy was fascinating. His name is Dr. Norman Gary, and we can probably put his website on our website. Yeah. The link.
There you go. So that was the Johnny Carson.
That was the Tonight Show.
If you didn't make it out to the movie theater to watch V.I. Warshawski or
maybe
Life
stayed
Stinks,
up
maybe you
super
watched
late.
Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
So we watched like a short little thing.
There was a YouTube video of that episode, and the guests were Leslie Ann Warren was on it for like a minute.
For a minute, yeah.
It was a weird minute.
So yeah, they showed a little piece of the July 25th episode where we don't know what guests were there, but the whole point of the YouTube video is to show Adam West's appearances both on the 25th and then just briefly, and then on the 26th as an actual guest. Mm-hmm. And on the 25th, Adam West and Leslie Ann Warren were taping an appearance at this other like local talk show, New York local talk show called Live at 5. Mm. And David, evidently, like this is a recurring segment where Letterman was like complaining that Live at 5 always got better guests than him. Ah,
okay.
And so like he took the page on the NBC floor and said, "Hey, who's on tonight? Oh, Adam West and Leslie Ann Warren. Okay, let's get them. Try to get them to stop in, like wave to the audience and say hi and everything." And they both did.
Yeah, Leslie Ann Warren just said hi, and then that was it. And then
so there's our connection. There's our official connection. Yeah. I'm sure she was at Live at 5.
She was probably talking about she's probably talking about this movie.
Could not find that on YouTube.
Yeah. And then, we mostly watched the segment with Adam West, and Adam West was talking about a TV show that he was going to be on.
Yep.
That was called
Look Well.
Look Well. And that is another, quote, busted pilot.
Yeah. So
this is a television pilot written and produced by Conan O'Brien and Robert Smigel. And it starred Adam West as like this washed up TV action hero. We watched the episode. That's also on YouTube.
Yeah, that's also on YouTube. Produced by Lorne Michaels as well. Because both Smigel and O'Brien would have been SNL writers at the time. Yeah.
And it's, a washed up TV action hero. He's at the peak of his career. He's like ceremonially deputized by local law enforcement. He falsely believes he can solve crimes in real life.
Yeah.
And then he has like a student who's played by Todd Field.
But yeah, so like Lookwell is the name of the actor who, he was a detective on a TV series, and now he thinks he can solve crimes in real life.
Yeah.
And like in the episode, he sort of like stumbles his way into sort of semi-helping the police catch the bad guy.
Yeah, but not.
Yeah, but not exactly.
Really?
Like he has like, illusions of grandeur from being, an actor, and has high thoughts of himself.
But
it was interesting.
I mean, this episode developed like a cult following, which it's only one episode.
It's one episode. It was like aired, I think, just the once on NBC, and
Yeah.
probably would have been picked up for a series if it had like better ratings or something. Because we were talking about this before recording that, like the busted pilots and everything. Like this is summertime, right? So this is like July, where most of the time you'd have reruns, and so NBC probably thought, well, we already spent the money to produce this pilot that we passed on, but we have nothing else to show. So let's just put it on the air and maybe it will stick. Like maybe we were wrong. And like the audiences will connect with this pilot that we passed on. And then we'll order a series and people will be happy that it's coming back. That's probably what this type of stuff was, or what we saw on TGIF with the busted pilots is like, we already paid the money, let's just put it on the air and see if it catches fire. We were crazy.
Okay, Todd Field, he directed.
That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't want to make myself sound like a fool.
But he's also an actor, because I've seen his face in other things. He was
the taller guy in the class, right?
Yeah, he's in like other movies like Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, Lookwell enlists his class of acting students to help him do undercover work, quote unquote, to try to catch these criminals doing stuff, but they're always making mistakes. It's an interesting concept, and I think if it had time to develop, it probably could have been better. Just as a pilot, it wasn't super funny, but it had some potential and promise. There was like some goofball spots. I liked the way Adam West was like really sort of like mugging to the camera at times, and like doing like goofy gestures as he was entering and exiting the scenes and stuff. So it could have been worse, could have been better. It's it's the life stinks of busted pilots, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, he does
flashes.
portray a homeless man in a small segment of this episode.
That was like the funniest part too.
Yeah,
because he's like crashing like this charity fundraiser for homeless, and he for the homeless, and he dresses up as a vagabond, and so he's like passing people. I was like, excuse me, out of my way, I'm eating out of trash cans, and like all this kind of stuff. So but yeah, so that stuff's on YouTube if you want to see what else was going on July 26, 1991. You got that stuff. And Adam West will appear in a 1991 movie called Maxim, I don't know how to pronounce it, Maxim Zool? It's Xul. Maxim Zool? Maxim Soul?
Sure.
Probably Zool. Normally X starting a word is Zool.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's about yet. Okay, on to rankings and ratings. So, on your 1 to 5 star scale, where would you put Life Stinks?
I would give this a 2.
I think I'm gonna give it a 2 as well. I honestly don't think it's a bad movie. It's just
I like
super
this
funny.
movie more than Other People's Money.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like no doubt. Although I do like your idea of putting Danny DeVito in this movie to play Bolt / Pepto. I think that would have been fun.
And call it Other People's Money.
Yeah.
And just, combine those two.
Yeah, I think that would be good. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 4 stars as well. Yeah, I don't think it's a terrible movie at all, but...
it's just not, what you expect.
Yeah, it's not Mel Brooks. So every movie's worth watching once. Would you watch it again?
Sure, maybe with like a bunch of people, or if there was like a midnight, like if they did a Mel Brooks type of two-fer type thing and this was a part of it, then yeah.
Okay, I could see that. I mean, if I'm given the choice between this and other Mel Brooks movies, then I'm definitely choosing other Mel Brooks movies. Yeah. I think we all would, right? But yeah, I can see that.
But if someone was like, hey, do you want to watch Life Stinks? I'd be like,
it's like, oh, we're going to go through his entire work history over the course of, a couple months.
Right.
You want to, like, join, and yeah, that could be fun. But if you out there want to watch Life Stinks as of this recording in June 2021, it's available on HBO Max, digital rental, VHS, DVD. As always, check your local listings. As for us, you can listen to us on all of your major podcasting platforms. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. It really helps us out a lot. You can email us at 1991movierewind@gmail.com. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd. Just search 1991 Movie Rewind or go to 1991movierewind.com for the full list of 800 plus movies, such as Maxim Zool and more. Next week, we'll be watching Impromptu, which is on Tubi, Hoopla, digital rental, VHS, and DVD. We will see you then.
Thanks.